What's up, gangsters? I thought this would be a good opportunity to take a quick look at why scribing situations are not always as straightforward as tutorials would have you believe. So let's check it out. Okay, so here I want to talk a little bit about scribing in weird situations. You know, scribing is all fun and games when it's right out in the middle of a wing or other relatively flat surface like this, where it's super easy to get to and it's easy to control your scriber. You can easily lay your scribing tape on there, no problems, right? That's unfortunately what gets talked about and demonstrated in most scribing videos. But when shit gets real, all those theories about how you should do it kind of go out the window because nothing works as well. And I'm talking about situations like, for example, let's look around at some of the places on my 1/48 Accurate Miniatures Mitchell that I'm working on right now. Let's start with what is not too complex, but that's working over this hump right here. This is where the high-Q guide tape that I use works really good. Because it will conform to a curve like that far better than Dymo will, which, if you're not familiar, Dymo is just label maker tape. It's hard to get, it's very stiff, and it really only works in situations where you're, like I said, right out in the middle of a flat surface. It's also very sticky and it will rip paint or primer right off of your model. The high-Q stuff typically will not. Anyway, this is the main reason why I like the high-Q so much, because of situations like that. So what I did when I scribed this is I laid out the tape on all three sides, you can see, of that pattern there, and that made it much easier to get a really nice, crisp set of lines that met the way that they're supposed to at the corners. Here's another situation where I had to, let me pick up the other one, where I had to work over a hump. Okay, I wanted to widen and deepen the split between the gear doors here, and in order to do that I had to be able to work over the top of this hump. So again, this high-Q guide tape works pretty good for that. The most challenging thing is actually getting it lined up correctly. And this is where just, being really careful is obviously super important. But, and this tape has been used a couple of times, so it's not going to want to cling very well. But anyway, you can see what I'm saying. It'll conform to that fairly well. But back to what I was about to say. One of the most important tools that people overlook for good scribing is this thing right here, an optivisor. All right? And this has got its highest magnification lens in it. Bottom line is, if you can't see effectively down to a super small resolution, your scribing work is probably not going to look crisp. I mean, that's just a fact of life. I know that there are probably people who can pull it off without a magnifier, but again, they're just not that common. And chances are you're not one of them. So I know that optivisors are not anybody's favorite thing, but they do serve a purpose. And good, crisp, precise scribing is one place where they definitely pay off. Anyway, let's look at some more weird places. All right, this is by far the weirdest of all. Okay, having to work this inside corner where the nacelle is blended into the wing root, and that happens on both sides of this thing. You can see where I've actually got a little bit of a repair that I had to make, where I slipped outside the line. And I filled that in with a little bit of thick lacquer primer that I use from this bottle right here. And then I just come back and very quickly will polish that down with a sander, and it'll be good. Now, to do those lines, I have had some luck with getting this guide tape to cling effectively in there and give me a guide that will last just long enough. I mean, it's not, it's not going to be stuck in there very well, but it stayed in there just long enough to allow me to very lightly follow it and scribe a line that was shallow but still deep enough that it would let the tip of my scriber follow it and allow me to complete the line. It was, but I won't deny that it was pretty dicey. It's just one of those things you have to just work with very carefully. On the other side here, where it was even tighter, I had a lot more difficulty. I was able to start the line the way that I said, but what I ended up doing to finish it was I picked up a different tool. And this is one of my other favorite things for scribing. This is one of Tamiya's fine razor saw blades, and I've just got it in an X-Acto handle. And this thing is good, especially with this one with the curved tip, because what you can do is, let's say that you're trying to work on an inside curve like this wing root, for example. So you get your guide tape stuck in there, and you can see that this is a difficult situation to scribe because getting the scriber tip in there at the right angle of attack is tough. I mean, it may work okay, but chances are it's not going to be, and see, the tape's not wanting to cling. It's been used before, but a fresh piece of tape would be okay. But the point being is, where the angle of attack may be good right here, it's not so good over here. And because of the fuselage being in the way, it's hard to ever get it at the exact right angle. So that's one situation where you may have to change to a tool that has a different orientation or different type of tip. This is a little bit better because it gives me a better angle of attack where I can work all the way around. And it's a little bit easier. That still is easier though than what I was dealing with on those engine nacelles. For those, what I had to do was, once I kind of had my line started, I took this saw blade with the curved tip and I worked it in next to the piece of tape. And it was not fast or fun or easy. Not nearly as easy as I'm making it look here. But basically what I did is I just worked that back and forth until it cleaned out the line enough to satisfy me. You can see though, I mean, it's bendy, so you have to be careful. But again, that'll get you down the road in situations like that. Now, for going over the top of a curve, using a scribing tool and a guide is generally not the easiest or most effective way. Trying to drag this perfectly over the top of that curve is again a challenge for all the same reasons that it is on the inside of a curve. And so that's where I switched to another one of these Tamiya fine saw blades. You can see right here. And things get a whole lot easier because now all you have to do is just very lightly run it over the curvature. And what you want to do, if as is often the case, where you're reestablishing a line that got sanded down during filling and finishing and all of that with a fuselage half, is use the line that's already there as the guide for the edge of the saw blade. So let's say this was the panel line that was already there, And what I wanted, or let me make one over here. So let's say that that's the panel line that's already there, and now I have this flat spot where I sanded it down from when I filled that seam right there that you can't see anymore. Just pretend, right? Anyway, start in that line and then work your way from there over the top until you join its partner on the other side. And this is one where having an optimizer really helps, because if the line on this side and the line on this side aren't perfectly collinear, you may have to angle a little bit. You may have to fudge things a little bit, and I'll show you some examples of that. Again, going back to the Mitchell, you can see that I had to work my way over the top of the fuselage in a bunch of places, here and here and here and here. And even though I didn't have to go very far, not all of these lines were perfectly collinear where they intersected at the joint. So again, you just have to work with it a little bit. And you can see where I've come back, because I have a bad habit of scribing too deep. It should only take 2 or 3 passes. I have a bad habit of going like 4 or 5 because I never think it's deep enough, and then I seem to always end up with lines that are too deep. What I've done is come back and filled those in a little bit, again using some of this primer, and all I have to do is come along with my 400 grit sander and just knock that off the top there. Pretty quick and pretty easy. Then I come back with a buffer stick just polish that out a little bit. And now what you can see is that I have a line that's just a little bit shallower and a little bit softer and looks a little bit better. Matches the existing panel lines better than what I had. But look, the truth is you're never going to match the existing panel lines perfectly, because I mean you're competing with a robot in most cases, because they use CNC machinery and computer-aided machining to create all those panel lines in the first place. So there you go. You can see that there are definitely some more challenging situations that arise when you're scribing on an aircraft. It's not always just going to be fun and games out there on flat surfaces, and there are inevitably going to be some tight corners that you may get yourself into, but with a little bit of forethought and a methodical approach, you can handle those. Alright guys, I hope you found this informative and useful, and as always, I definitely appreciate you watching. Much love.